Clerk, will you determine if we have a quorum?
Mr. Chair, we have 7 in attendance.
Thank you. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item is to approve the agenda. We do have a couple of changes. We are going to add 9A, which is a revised calendar, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
If it's not on there, yep.
And we are going to remove 9C. It was a request for a cooperative agreement that has been withdrawn. So is there a motion to approve the agenda with the adding of 9A and removal of 9C?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Community comment, 3 minutes per speaker, 15 minutes per topic. Board will not respond to questions or comments, but will do so after the meeting or at a later date. So anyone for community comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Dan Jalak, and I'm a third grade teacher at Roosevelt. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to be quick and brief. You've got some decisions you have to make here, and they're going to be rather consequential. I just want to have you look at something real quick. This is a table. The last 10 years of the school I work at, Roosevelt, free and reduced in our population of students. I wanted to point out a couple things. From 2008 to 2009, we had a population of 635 students in my building. If you multiply that times 55.7%, the free and reduced rate, that meant that 354 students were free and reduced. Free and reduced students are students of social low economic status. They can be more challenging, and oftentimes they're very low in their education and they need special needs. If you look at the numbers don't show it there, but that year we had 24 sections. That meant if you just averaged it out, 14.75 or 15 students in every classroom in our school that year were free and reduced. Okay? I'd like to jump ahead to 17-18. You can see the student population there is 459. Multiply that times the 73.6% free and reduced that year. That gave us a total of 338 students in the building free and reduced. 15 students per classroom were free and reduced that year, just on average. You're going to be considering some cuts here, and my interest is whether you've looked at these types of numbers. Oftentimes, we have a budget, we can't pay this amount, so we're going to cut teachers, but we've got to start considering this socio-economic class. Every year since 2008, it's gone up 3% or more. You look at the graph in the bottom, you can see that in the blue line. What you don't see is our declining enrollment. Our declining enrollment in my building has gone down 2% every year. Why is that? That's our real problem. That's our real problem right there. Things that we have going on in our public schools are fantastic. We need to get that out there. We are in a unique community because we have so many competitive sources for our education. But I really want you to consider these free and reduced numbers. This year they're projected over 78%. That's a lot. That's a lot in my building. If we were to consider those same numbers, the student population in each classroom would go to 18.8 free and reduced. The total student population in each classroom would be 26, given the cuts that may happen at 19 classrooms in my building. I've been at Roosevelt 21 years now. In 21 years, I've never seen low classrooms go down to 19. We are capable of having 25 classrooms in our building. I know the budget's something you got to grapple with, but I really urge you to look for some of these cuts in other areas. Because consider what happens now. We're cutting, and our declining enrollment is happening at 2%, closer to 3% a year. What is that going to do for our enrollment? I just want you to consider those numbers from that point of view. And then, finally, consider where are those kids? For example, let's say we're going to cut a 5th grade classroom, 5th grade or older kids, and they can handle more responsibility. But what if the majority of those kids during that year free and reduced in that building were in 5th grade? Now you're not talking 18, 19 students. You might be talking a couple classrooms that could have entire free and reduced students. The point I'm trying to make here is it's an incredible amount of work and dedication to get to these kids to classroom levels. And if we have high classrooms, the attention that we need to spend with each child becomes more and more. So in consideration of the cuts that are coming, I don't know, I've looked in the past few board minutes, but not all of them. I didn't see where you had referenced these numbers. And I'm only talking Roosevelt, but if you look across the board, it's pretty similar in the other elementary as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vicki Kylan, 2nd grade teacher also at Roosevelt. I had no intentions of talking. I wanted to be here just so you know that our elementary teachers really do care, and we may not always be here, but we do, and we really care about these kids. And there's kids coming in that can't get their shoes on in the morning, that their zipper's broken, and we make sure they're safe, and we do a lot of things to make sure that we care about them before they can even learn. And these numbers are high, and we're very concerned, and we want to be there for them all. Our small groups aren't small groups anymore, and I know I don't have answers of where to find it, but I just hope that there's places that we can look to keep these numbers down. In 21 years myself too, things have changed, and we need to keep our class sizes as small as possible so we can meet all of these needs and get them to where they need to be for learning, and keep families happy and keep families here. We love our schools, we love what we do, and we want more and more people here at Faribault Public Schools. So thanks. I know it's a tough job this week, but thanks for considering all the things that we really need. So class sizes district-wide, I mean, we really need low as possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
Any other community comment?
I hope will become clear by the end of my time.
Hi, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Many of you know me, but for those at home that may not, I am Tom Casper. I am a 34-year teacher in this district, a 2-year substitute teacher in this district, and an 8-year board member from this district. And as such, I think that would speak to my commitment to serving this district. I come tonight for 3 reasons. 1 is to thank you. 2 is to express a concern, and 3, perhaps to give some unsolicited advice. Thank you. The last time I was at one of these meetings, not all of you were here. I thank you for your willingness to serve. I thank you for the effort and the work that you do to try and do what all too often is a somewhat thankless job, and that is to guide a school district, especially in times such as these in our district where we are facing more cuts, something that I went through as a board member, something that I went through more times than I care to think about as a teacher. So thank you for your willingness to serve. My concern came from my last board meeting as a board member. That was in December. And at that meeting, the board was asked to take a vote on school goals. And we had presentations from administrators from across the district. And to my dismay, all the schools except the high school talked about their goal for the next 2 years, beginning next fall and for 2 years, included to raise MCA test scores. Now, some of you have heard me talk about this in the past. I won't reiterate that, except to say that in times of cuts, we must do that which is, or save that which is most valuable. And it is my position that there is a lack of research, a lack of evidence, a lack of experience, my own and the teachers that I have spoken to over these several decades, that those tests will lead to a better experience and a better education for our students. So I voted no on those proposed school goals. I was outvoted. But I'm asking you, as you move forward, to think about that which is essential for our students. Because I have yet to see evidence, research, that backs up better test scores as being a benefit to the students. Who benefits? I'm not sure. I could speculate, but that might be mean-spirited, so I will not. So as you face these decisions tonight and ongoing about what to fund and what not to fund, I would hope you would decide for yourself what is needed to do the best we can for our students. It has been my experience that words matter. Literacy, you'll find that in the MCA documents. However, the MCA definition of literacy does not match my own. And having 45 years of teaching language, I think I might have some insight into that. What is a well-educated Faribault graduate? What are they able to do? What are they understand? What skills do they have? What habits do they have? I think that if the board can come to some kind of common understanding about literacy and what constitutes a well-educated student, that would inform your decisions. Now to the unsolicited advice beyond what I just gave you. I passed out to you a package of seeds. There are at least two ways of looking at education. One is a machine that needs to be fine-tuned, and the other is a garden. I choose to go with the garden because every student is different. Every garden is different. Every plant, vegetable, flower needs its own situation, its own things to survive and thrive. The Navajo people have lived in the western part of this nation for thousands of years. Part of their lifestyle was agriculture, and they had what they called the three sisters. They were corn, beans, and squash. Now, their method of planting is very different from the agribusiness method of planting thousands of acres of soybeans or thousands of acres of corn or thousands of acres of anything. They called them the three sisters because each of those three crops would benefit the other. The corn was the tallest. It provided a framework for the beans to climb on. And the squash grew low to the ground with big leaves, shading the ground, keeping it cool in a hot climate and preventing weeds. These plants were symbiotic. The corn provided the framework, the beans fixed nitrogen in the soil, and the squash kept down the leaves, while the corn and the squash benefited from the nitrogen provided by the beans. The Hippocratic Oath in medicine says, do no harm. I think the unofficial oath of school boards and school administrators and teachers and paraprofessionals and everyone who works with young people ought to be do no harm. Now that is a difficult job, especially in the situation you find yourselves, that our district finds itself again. But please don't accept easy answers. Please don't accept formulaic answers. Use your talent, your ability, your intelligence, and your experience to provide the best system that our students deserve and need in order to thrive. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Any additional community comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item 4, recognition awards and presentations. I believe Mr. Sesker is going to head this up.
So I'm stepping in for Matt Steichen. He usually does this for our presentation of awards for students who have done a great job. And I'm going to go down the list and introduce these folks. You can see them on your program right now, on your agenda. And I'm not sure if everybody's here or not, so I'm going to announce it. So if you are up here, just come on up. And then after I introduce you and talk about you a little bit, then I'll have you go around and shake the hands of each of the board members. All right? So first off, in swimming is senior Tyler Bauman. He capped off his swimming career at FHS by qualifying for the state swim meet. He accomplished the rare feat of qualifying out of the consolation heat by cutting nearly 2.5 seconds off his time in the 100 backstroke to match the state standard of 57.04 seconds. Seated 21st, Bauman capped off his season with a 19th place finish at state. Congratulations, Tyler. In basketball, we have senior Joe Palmer. Joe needed just over 2 seasons to join the short list of Faribault basketball players who have reached the 1,000 career points. Over 5% of those points came in one night in December when Palmer scored what is believed to be a school and possibly a Big 9 conference record of 57 points against Hutchinson. Palmer was named to the Big 9 all-conference team for the 2nd year in a row. Congratulations, Joe. For wrestling, the Falcon wrestling team continued its tradition of excellence this winter, led by 4 wrestlers who have helped the program to a 70-28 dual record and 2 trips to the team section championship match over the last several years. Josh Hayda finished his career wrestling at the state tournament at the Excel Energy Center after winning 115 matches and twice earning all conference honors. Austin Underdahl finished his career with 91 wins, the final 2 helping him tie for 7th at the state tournament. He was also a 2-time all-conference performer. Josh Othout and Riley Stoltz both reached 100 wins this season and will be back to lead the Falcons as seniors next winter. Congratulations to our wrestlers. Okay, science team. The Faribault High School science team placed 5th and qualified for state at the region meet held on February 2nd at Century High School in Rochester. Kevin Tovar and Eve Paulson placed 1st in both the, how do you say it? Boom 11, thank you. Okay, Boom 11 and the Mousetrap vehicle competitions. Paulson and, is it Hania? Hania Vidal Camacho placed 2nd in the Mission Possible competition, and Brooke Fleechek and Alexander Roloff placed 3rd in the forensics competition. At the state competition, Faribault placed 24th. Top finishers were 2nd in Boom 11 Mousetrap vehicle, Kevin Tovar, and Chow Trong, 9th geological mapping, Mitchell Hansen, and, oh gosh, I'm going to rip this one. What is it? Xochitl Navejas, thank you. 10th Mission Possible, and Hania Vidal Camacho and Enola Manson were part of that 10th Mission Possible. So congratulations to Coach Jason Boggs and our state science team. Okay, next up we have Bruce Miles, who we had actually help us out a little bit last year. He's going to call in, and so I'm going to kind of introduce you to who Bruce is and how he's helped our middle school move forward. We've got a great middle school team, outstanding teachers and administrators. Here he is right now. Hi, Bruce. I'm going to put you on speaker. Hey, Bruce, can you hear us? Hold on a second. Let me fix this. I could probably just hold it, too. All right, Bruce, can you hear us?
I can. Is it good on your end?
Yeah, good on our end. Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right,
Thanks for making this work out.
You bet. So Bruce Miles, he works specifically for districts who may have difficulty with some aspects with whatever it might be with regards to mainly personnel and things like that. He has helped us through to get through some lows that we experienced from last year in the middle school, and working together with our staff to get them together and to come up with solutions for some of the things that we really wanted to resolve from last year to this year. We had a lot of things happen last year that really caused a little bit of friction with our staff, but after our meetings, and Bruce can explain this a little bit, he and along with Mike and the administrative team, and then also a core of staff members in the middle school, came up with some great solutions, and the result has been really quite phenomenal. We have had an excellent year at the middle school. Things are really turned around. Part of that's due to Bruce, a lot of it's due to our staff, but I'm going to let Bruce kind of explain what has happened over the past year and what his feedback was as a result of helping out. So go ahead and take that over, Bruce.
Yep, thanks, Todd. Could I also ask, has Mike had a chance to explain in depth, the initiatives that have happened at the middle school?
No, not yet. We've seen that, but he hasn't explained that in depth.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yep, he's coming right up.
Thanks.
Hi there, Bruce.
Hey, hi, Mike. Hope you had a good start to your week.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I don't want to duplicate stuff. I mean, where do you want me to start? Where do you want me to end up so that I don't waste anybody's time given what you're going to tell them too?
Yeah, I guess I'm pretty flexible too. I think if you want to just talk about the services and kind of the initial meetings we had and where we took it from there, and then I can follow up with what you say.
Okay, Mike, you feel free to guide me too if there's something that I'm missing or dropping or not providing enough detail on.
Sure, will do.
Thanks. Welcome, board. Thanks for the opportunity. My work started last spring. I was asked to come in and lead what's called a behavior audit exercise, where we had the entire staff identify their answers to 3 questions. Exactly how do you want kids to behave here? What's like the FMS way? What do you have right now that's working, in terms of strategies, techniques, policies, procedures, support? What do you have that's working to help you get the behaviors you want? And then the third question is, what needs to come to the front burner to get behavior going the way you want it to? And Mike, I don't know, we must have had, 40 or 50, because we had your teachers plus EAs in there, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So the group went through that, and then the admin team and I met after and figured out how to make a couple of adjustments fairly quickly. This fall, I got a chance to work with a smaller subgroup. I don't know, Mike, a dozen?
Yeah, I would say 15 or so. That seems right.
And Mike, I'm not sure how those people were picked, but you put people in there that I thought were not, they were not just taking up space. I mean, these were people that really wanted to see things go. There was one person who was critical, but I don't think that person didn't want the building to be successful. That person just was a shade more skeptical.
Yeah, and
so that,
what you're referring to, or what Bruce is referring to, is our positive behavior expectations, and rolling that out, and coming together with our behavior committee that worked on that through the middle school, and then we came together as a district and worked on that policy as well. So that's what he's referring to now.
And Mike, I can't remember exactly, but when we met with that positive behavior team, was that right after the district rollout, or was it the day before the district rollout?
It was right within, I think it was the day after. No, I think it was the day before.
You guys work on it prior to us.
Yep, I think we did.
Yeah, because, you know, the group clearly had some questions. I mean, these, you know, they're like, you know, are you sure this is all going to work? But once they figured out what it was about, and that they had their hands on the steering wheel, I thought the response was incredibly healthy. I mean, the group really dove in and figured out how to implement it at the building level. I did a very short 90-minute training with Mike and Kelly and Ted regarding how to use some different leadership tools over the course of the year. And then over this year, I've checked in with each of them 4 times. I took individual calls with them, asked them how it was going for them, asked them how they thought the admin team was doing, how they thought the building was doing, and boy, it just sounds like a really healthy crowd. Kelly and Ted believe they've got a real, they each have a real strong voice and get heard. They don't feel like, you know, they're too far down the totem pole. Mike reports that things are going well. I mean, Kelly and Ted have a lot of optimism about the team, about their role, about where the building's going. I've reported back to Todd after each of those bundles of calls, and it's just a pleasure to hear that people, you know, that group really, and they're optimistic as leaders anyway, but I don't think they're unrealistic. I think they've got a lot of belief that their hard work is not only paying off at the building level, but that it's making the administrative team stronger. Mike, Todd, is there anything else that I can provide as context or backstory on this part of it?
No, I think I'm going to have the board, if they want to ask questions about this whole process and what this is all about, go ahead and fire them away at both you and Mike and see what you guys, or how you guys can answer them. So we'll just take some questions and see how things are going. If you have questions about the middle school now and where things are, or if you have questions about what some of that work was about, Phil, let us know.
Sure. Are you telling me I taught to mastery already?
You did. Well said. I would agree. I think the year is going well, and like Todd said right away, I think you can narrow it down to one answer. You know why, and that's because of the teamwork. That we have 100 staff members in that building that are devoted to the middle school, devoted to education. And in year 2 of our middle school model, we've seen a lot of improvement. The dedication and the time that gets put into it is paying off, and I think everyone's buying in and happy with the results that we're seeing, and that just keeps building off each other, or building off itself. So we're already through 3 quarters here. I was going to say we're off to a good start, but you know, we've been running really well for a while, and we're excited to wrap the year up as strong as we started.
Todd, can I just say,
got a question for you here?
Not really a question, just
okay.
a comment. Obviously, we sat here in some more difficult conversations last year, and so hats off to Mike, hats off to Kelly, hats off to your entire team for making this, you know, the progress that you've seen this year. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort, and hats off, kudos to you. And if, you know, sounds like Bruce has played a hand in that as well, so thank you, Bruce. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll echo that as well, and commend you for the progress that has been made and hopefully will continue to be made. Maybe later this year we can have a complete or a more complete report, maybe some analytics thrown in there to please the numbers people, and so we can take a look at some of the evidence that you've had. I mean, and clearly anecdotal evidence is much better. And so we look forward maybe to hearing more about your success in the future.
You bet. And the purpose of this meeting was to introduce you to Bruce, obviously not virtually, but at least voice-wise, so you kind of know that we've been involving him in this work and in this study. But as Bruce said, it's all, and as Mike said too, it's about the team behind us and that staff that has really come together and has done a nice job for us here at the middle school. So thank you. Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it. Thanks, Bruce. Take care.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye.
Moving on, item 5, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to consider the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We have no discussion on that, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. We have 102 years of retirements to consider tonight. We'll have a motion to begin with, and then board members can comment about individuals during the discussion portion. So is there a motion to consider these retirements?
I move to consider the retirements.
Second.
I think it's been moved and seconded several times. So. Okay, so Tim Boren, 32 years. Jeannie Brown-Kussel, 37 years. Green Sandborn, 33 years. Any discussion?
I have had the pleasure to work with all three of these people through my teaching career. Doreen Sanborn's 2 children were in my class. I couldn't have better people with whom to have worked, people who are passionate about the quality of education and moving the best kind of experience forward for our young people. I very much appreciate their years of service.
Mr. Chair, I've been fortunate to work with all 3 of these people. In fact, I coached Doreen's daughter when she was a sophomore. I think she's close to 40 now. But anyway, with that, what's going to be walking out the door in a happy retirement is, again, a load of professionalism and expertise that is going to be difficult to replace. In fact, I don't know if you can replace it. Doreen has always been there. I can't imagine the district not going to the high school and not seeing her there at some capacity. Mr. Boren and Ms. Brown-Kriesel, having come back out of retirement to, and I did question both of them why, but to, again, help out the district just shows their professionalism, not just in the classroom, but to their colleagues. And what great mentors they have been to other teachers in the building, to administrators, and to the district and community as a whole. And I cannot thank them enough for what they've done for this district, for this community, and the most important thing, kids. So thank you and bless you.
I'll be voting yes on this item, but I'm putting an asterisk by Jeannie Brown's name because this is the 3rd time we've done this.
I'll vote yes with some skepticism tonight. Yeah.
Like I say, there's an
We'll
asterisk.
see.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carried 7-0. Item 7, Finance. Jennifer is going to report.
We have Jeff Seeley with us this evening from Ellers to go over the abatement bonds that were sold today, and that will be our first item.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And what I'm passing out is what we call our sale day report. We'll talk about it and summarize the results of the bond today that we held. So, as we go through this, you do have a resolution in front of you, and that resolution is to award the sale of the bonds tonight. The report I'm giving you gives you the information on how the bond sale went. Before I leave, I'm going to leave a packet with Jen for signatures, and I need one document signed before I leave, so if we could interrupt the meeting for a minute, that'd be great. So the sale day report, turning your attention to that. We have $1,845,000 of general obligation tax abatement bonds. Now, as you know, these bonds, we went through a process to issue them, which included a hearing, therefore, to finance parking lot improvements. And they're limited to that specific purpose. So we received 4 bids today. The low bid was from United Bankers Bank out of Bloomington, Minnesota at a 2.08. So better than what we anticipated. We had 2.41 in the pre-sale, which was about 4 or 5 weeks ago. That was the look forward at the time to see what the market was like. And one of the reasons for that is that we have seen declining interest rates. So with the bonds, you did have 2 ratings on the bonds. One was a state credit enhanced program. That is the program where the state will actually step in should there be any default. And with Standard & Poor's, they have a AAA rating for that particular program. Then you have an underlying rating, or your rating on the bonds. It's unique to you, and that's an A+. So you have a very strong rating. And the rating report is in here. We can talk a little bit about that. But again, the 2.08 is lower than the 2.41 in the pre-sale. So what we also noticed is that you received a higher premium than the pre-sale, and so we were able to put some extra money in the construction fund to the tune of about $41,000. So you have a little extra money in the construction fund should you want to address some other parking lot issues, and the rates came in better. So taking a look at this, on attachment page 1, you'll see the actual individual bids. And Bankers Bank, you see 2 sets of numbers there. You have the rate, that is the interest rate that you will be paying, and then the reoffering yield, which is your true interest rate. Let me explain that. So you will be paying 3% for each one of those maturities. A bond is not like a loan where you have a fixed amount over a period of time. Every principal payment carries its own interest rate. So you'll be paying 3%. However, they gave you a premium. They gave you money up front. The reason they do that is, some people say it's like credits on a mortgage. You know, if you pay money up front, you get a lower interest rate, that type of thing. But it really has to do with the market. Right now, with interest rates being very low, investors, of course, are looking for the best return on investment. So you have to think about it from an investment standpoint. And what happens is if they can generate or receive 3% and the market's only 1.75, then that bond is more attractive for them to purchase. Okay? But they can go ahead and purchase that, but they have to pay over face value for it. So that money that they pay over and above 100% of the price tag, if you will, gets generated as a premium and paid back to you. And the reason they're willing to pay more for it is because the interest is tax exempt. So they get that, whatever tax bracket they're in, they get that benefit. So they're willing to pay more than face value for a higher return. So that's why you're paying 3% on every one of those maturities, but you've generated money sufficient that was given up front to have the reoffering yield or the actual interest rate of 1.6 through 2.35. Now, we only show that for the winning bid. You can see Baird also bid, Northland, and Stiefel out of Birmingham, Alabama. So on page 2 of the attachments, here are your sources and uses. So the bonds are $1,845,000. You had about $40,000 worth of debt service on hand. In other words, your fund balance and your debt service, that's going to be applied towards the very first interest payment. The reoffering premium, that is the amount of money that was paid that we just talked about how that was paid and why, of $111,000. So you get $111,000 up front for this. And then we estimate around 7,000 interest earnings. The underwriter, Bankers Bank, their fee is about $9,000. Capitalized interest, that is your debt service funds on hand, and a little bit of bond proceeds will actually be applied towards that first interest payment. And then legal and fiscal costs are your bond attorney, rating agency, us, paying agent, and so forth, everyone involved in selling the bonds. So you can see you have about $1.91 million, or $1,911,000 that you could spend for construction on these projects. The next page, page 3, is simply your principal interest and the related tax levy. The state requires, this is a 10 years worth of abatement, so, and it's almost an 11-year term, but you have 10 years worth of levies. The state requires that you add 5% in case there's any default. So you can see for pay 20, which next December you'll be setting that for fiscal 2021, you have a principal payment of $160,000, interest payment of $55,000, and the total levy adds in there 5%, so $226,000. So here's your payment schedule and levy schedule. On page 4, the tax impact is identical to what we showed you in your pre-sale. So on a $150,000 home, the tax impact is $10 a year for the term of the bonds. So then the final section here is the rating report from S&P, and a couple things to point out. First, you had a strong rating. On page 7, there's a few comments on the positives of the rating. They mentioned the strong general fund reserves. That's very important to a rating. Obviously very important to balance your budget and so forth. So congratulations on that. And it points out management's good financial practice. So Todd and Jen, good job with that. And then low overall debt burden with rapid payment. So you've done a number of things very well, and it's been recognized by S&P when it goes into this rating. So any comments or questions on the way the bond sale went today?
Just for clarification, these are bonds issued by the board, board approved.
That's right.
And when you said the impact is $10 on $150,000, that's $10 a year. Correct?
A year.
Okay. And this money can't be used for anything else?
No. First of all, by law, it's limited to financing parking lot improvements. Secondly, obviously, your authorization and resolutions limit its use.
Okay. I don't think we moved and seconded this, did we? Was there a motion to accept this report?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now, is there any further discussion?
Did you get the second, Jason? All right.
This is a resolution item, so Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
John Curry.
Aye.
Jason Engbrand.
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler.
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway.
Aye.
Chad Wolf. Aye. Mr. Chair, passes 7-0.
Thank you.
All right. I have a document.
Okay.
You don't want to wait till the end to get that?
Yeah.
I left the rest of them for you. Okay, there's the same item. If you could just sign and put your board title, board chair, and then you'll do the same.
I'm holding up for a little lower rates here.
I don't know what else could trigger it.
Just sign and title.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
The next item is item 19-18, revised policy 715, post-insurance debt compliance policy and procedures. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So this was given to us by.
Let us move in second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded now. Please, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. So this was a revised policy 715 that Ellers provided for us for post-issuance debt compliance policy and procedure.
What's this mean to us?
Good question.
So obviously, after you issue bonds, this bond and prior bonds, you have an obligation to provide what's called continuing disclosure. In other words, provide investors of your bonds, the purchasers of your bonds, and future purchasers information pertinent to your district so they can make a wise investment decision. So the federal government requires you to do this. You had a policy that basically laid out the steps and what you had to do. The government made some changes, and so your policy was out of date. So this revises it and brings you back into compliance with post-issuance compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer, since this is a policy, does this need to go through the one-time through and then the second reading, or is this just, we're good to go?
It doesn't have to. That's a formality that the board does for those options, but there's no requirement by law that you have to.
Okay. Any further discussion? Resolution item, Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
John Curry.
Aye.
Jason Engbrecht.
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler.
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway.
Aye.
Chad Wolf, aye. Mr. Chair, passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Vermillion College Concurrent Agreement for 2019-20. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Oh, second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, just to let you know, that most of you know what this is already. It's a program where our students go to Vermillion College and they get an environmental college credit for that from the high school. Peter Jacobson runs that.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Budget enrollment report.
The only thing of note there is as of the end of February, we are still 17 students ahead of what our preliminary budget or what our current budget has. Obviously, we will be paying very close attention to these enrollment figures to see if we need to make an adjustment for our final budget.
Okay, thank you. Financial report.
The only thing of note, we are putting in a correction on the last page. The investment account balances under the irrevocable trust, it shows 23 million. It's really 2,300,000. So we will be posting that correction on the minutes, or excuse me, in the board book for our finance committee.
Moving a decimal point.
We're going to move a decimal point, sadly.
Chad caught that at the meeting.
Good job.
Okay. Item 3 is a resolution, gifts and donations. The following items are to be considered. Is there a motion to consider?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Following donations have been made. Faribault Booster Club, $350. Donation for February producer event worker. $2,000. Volt Athletics for training software. $5,789.50 for the score table connector kit. Item 2, Karen and James Huberty, $26 for the middle school band department. 3, Donors Choose Organization, $605. Donations for early childhood family education, Tim and Kathy Kayer, $150 for Donors Choose project. Stefan and Tricia Grabel, $20 for the book club. Mohani Singh, 5 quilts with pillowcases. All these are for childhood family education. Kathy Kayer, 22 pairs of leggings and some clothes and soap and other items to early childhood. And Eleanor Grabel, $50 to Donors Choose project, 27 towards Scholastic Book Club, and 25 towards summer care food packages. Any discussion on acceptance of these items?
No, just that we appreciate all the generosity of everyone in the community.
Excuse me?
We appreciate the generosity of everyone in the community. That's all.
Okay. Any discussion, further discussion? Okay, Mr. Clerk?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
John Curry.
Aye.
Jason Engbrecht.
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler.
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway.
Aye.
Chad Wolf. Aye. Mr. Chair, passes 7-0.
Thank you. Other committee reports, District Advisory Committee.
Good evening. To give you an update, the District Advisory Committee met the Thursday before spring break, Pi Day, just so everybody knows, 3/14. Okay. The focus of our agenda that night was to look at future programming or potential programming. When I came on board, there were 3 areas that the district had been researching, and so to continue that effort, looking around the potential for either year-round school at one of our levels or all of our levels, the potential of looking at a language immersion type of program, and the third being around a magnet program like a STEAM program or STEM or something around there. So the focus of our agenda that night was to do brainstorming around that. We had a lot of great discussion and talked about the potential for our students, and then also concerns obviously around how to implement and what that would look like. Our next steps is to start doing some focus groups around both our staff within our buildings and collecting more information around these potential programs, and the other is to do some focus groups with the community. So getting parent input, community business input, community member input. So, thank you.
Okay.
I was an attendee in that session, and it was such a pleasure to hear community members that were meeting with us to engage in robust and positive conversation about the possibilities that exist in Faribault schools.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
And Insurance Committee, Nicole?
Good evening. So our insurance committee met a few weeks ago now, and we've got some good news. We got all of our rates back on our non-health insurance policies. And so for our dental insurance, we have a 3-year freeze. So there's no increase, no decrease, but a freeze for the next 3 years, which is good news for us. Our life insurance, we have a 3-year rate as well, and it's actually decreasing by just about $11,000 per year. So we were very happy to hear that also. We also had our Ltd renewal, and for our Ltd, we didn't have a 3-year cap on it for 3 years, but we did also see a decrease in that for just about $5,600 for the next year. So that's good news. We're seeing improvements in those plans. We also talked as an insurance committee to add the option for our employees to take advantage of some vision insurance, and our committee decided to move forward with that, and so that's really neat. It's great to offer additional benefits for our employees. It's at no cost to the school district because the district at this point isn't contributing any sort of value towards the plan, so it's completely on the employee's expense. So it's a great benefit to offer, so that we can continue adding perks to our employees. And then lastly, we're still working with our FEA and our other unions on our health insurance. We did get all of our renewals back, all of our proposals back within the last couple of weeks, and we asked for final and best rates as well, and we did receive those also. And so we're working with our committees and also our consultant to determine which way we want to go. We've narrowed it down to 3 different options, and so we're meeting tomorrow as a committee and bringing in some other people to educate us on a couple other options, and then hoping to have a decision within about a week, and so that we can bring a recommendation to the school board meeting in April. That's it. Does anyone have any questions or anything else the rest of the committee members would like to add?
You're good to go.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anne Marie.
Hi, so for wellness, I thought I'd just report out that we had a meeting a couple weeks ago. I believe I talked about the STEP challenge, so I won't rub that in again. The DO was in 6th place, and Roosevelt, yes, they won. Congratulations. 211 people signed up, so that was really fantastic. The newer idea that the Wellness Committee has that we followed up on, that actually Matt Steichen followed up on, was adopting a 2-mile stretch of highway and having volunteers from the school district participate in cleanup. So we are pursuing that idea, and I believe that is it for the wellness report.
And community ed?
Okay. And Jen was going to come from Jen, you haven't been up here enough, so. I was just going to give a brief explanation of the voluntary pre-kindergarten funding, since it's been, as Cindy explained earlier today in her presentation, we've had 60 slots that we've been awarded throughout the last 3 years. Starting in 2016, 2017, we applied, we received 18 slots, we ended up using 15. Then the next 2 years, including this year, we were able to receive 45 more. We are not guaranteed those 45, we're only guaranteed the 15, the original that we applied for 2016, 2017. There are 2 bills, one in the Senate File 1832 that I testified on a few weeks ago, and then it has a companion bill in the House as 1230. So the Senate file actually asks for an expansion of seats. So we're hoping that that moves forward. Unfortunately, you know, the VPK funding only guarantees those original slots. With the missing 45 slots, you can imagine that adds up to quite a bit of funding. Adds up to over $300,000 of funding. So that means some really difficult conversations are happening right now at McKinley. So just wanted to update you on that. It's been a terrific opportunity for this community, and we're hoping that it moves forward. I know the Senate Education and Finance Committee, the E12 committee, rolled it over into the omnibus, recommended it for the omnibus bill. So I'm hoping that has some legs and that we'll see some fruition to that.
Anne Marie, can I ask,
Yep.
are local legislators aware of this and the
Yes.
impact, and are they working with us?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that. So Senator Jasinski has signed on, actually as an author, to Senate File 1832. So that's really good news. And he was there at the Senate hearing that I testified at, and was happy that someone from Faribault was representing. Yeah. Yeah.
No, just it's a rather unique funding, because even though the program is really in Anne Marie's community ed, school readiness, the funding for voluntary pre-K goes through the general fund. And so it's almost like another grade level in the general fund. So we do a lot of, so her teachers, you know, part of their time is funded through the general fund, and part of their time is funded through primarily school readiness. So it's kind of a unique program as far as how the finances go, but where the actual programming takes place.
And Cindy did an excellent job at describing the numerous funding streams that we have flowing into our preschool classes. So we've got five funding sources. This is just one of those components. So we're doing a lot of braiding, a lot of making sure we're in compliance with each of those restrictions and regulations with each of those funding streams. So it's been an interesting last few years with all of this new revenue that we've gotten from the legislature, and we will continue to do whatever we can to pursue that funding.
The bill or bills out there, is it for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years? Or
It actually, the Senate file didn't have a limit.
Okay.
Didn't have an end date, so it wasn't going to sunset. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I believe the governor has put in his target as the original, or the as of this year. So it would be the 60 slots. So it's kind of a, Senate's here, governor's here, maybe we could go here. Conference committee, I'm sure, will work that out.
Well, thank you for taking the time to testify on this.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty important issue, and clearly we heard from families that it makes a difference for them. I believe a strong start at McKinley is a strong path for engaging families in public school all the way through, so I really appreciate your work on this.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope we can get those slots back.
Yeah, and I think Courtney and Carolyn reached out right away and said, what can we do? And I know that you've talked to legislators on our behalf, so we appreciate that. And everything that you guys have all been doing to support McKinley has been wonderful, so thank you. It's the happiest place on earth. I know, I think I'm ripping that off from some organization. But.
You didn't just cost us $1 million.
No
lawsuit's going to be announced tomorrow.
Yeah.
Please pass our compliments on to your EC staff about what a great presentation they did today, and it had to be cut short. We will watch the rest of that presentation.
Yeah, those videos were amazing.
I am a grandmother of children that benefited greatly from the ECFE program, and I recognize that that funding is also dependent on the legislature. But I think, like Courtney mentioned, our EC and our ECFE program is the best connection we can have for continuation from preschool into our elementary and on. So I would very much hope that we can maintain those programs.
Absolutely. Thank you. We do too. Any questions?
And the facility committee, Mr. Sesker, are you going to comment?
Yeah, and you guys feel free to comment too. You can see what the facility committee talked about. I can briefly explain the Akita box solution proposal. That's unique. This is all taken out of the LTFM funds. Basically, that is it's a support package for our entire facility area, and it's kind of complicated to understand, but it basically puts these QR codes all over the place so that we can isolate every single facility within our school district instead of always going to the closet and pulling out the plans and trying to figure out what they are or what's working or what's not working. There's an attachment on what that package includes. I'm not going to go over everything, but it does, if you want to get a real brief explanation of that, there's space data collection and asset data collection and mapping. Those are the two major pieces of this software. It'll be very useful for Kane and his staff, and of course with us too, if there's ever a future bond or any sort of deferred maintenance that we want to go through. So,
Todd, can I just add to that? It came out in our facilities meeting that we think it adds a lot of redundancy in terms of should something happen to our grounds superintendent type of thing, everything in these buildings becomes virtualized and out in the cloud type of thing, digitized, shall I say. So if we have a leak somewhere and people don't know where that main shutoff valve is or something, Kane's not available for whatever odd reason, we can get to it quickly. So
a lot of our building heads have everything in their minds. It hasn't been put on paper, and to have this is like Chad said, a nice asset for the district. Good point.
Okay, thank you, and I'll point out that we will be voting on this soon. Okay, that concludes the committee reports. Move on to item 9A, consider approval of our monthly revision to the calendar.
The saga continues. So the proposal I have for you it was uploaded today. I apologize that I didn't get up before that. The latest mass update that we have is that the Senate and the House have both voted on bills to cover some or a minimum of 3 days of the snow days that we've had so far. The Senate bill actually opens it up for the school district to take more than that. The House is at 3, and they're going to conference committee now. So we're fairly positive that we're going to have at least 3 days that they will forgive. So our proposal is to update the school calendar once again and to back us down to June 5th being the last day. So right now, the last resolution we had is that Monday, the 10th, would be the last day for kids, and so what we're proposing is to do the 5th, which would be Wednesday. And then that would make Thursday, the 6th, the teacher work day. And hoping for no more snow days.
Okay. Excuse me, I should have asked for a motion before we had this explanation, but is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion now?
Just to hopefully point out to the board is we hope that there's not any more snow days, but I think we're at this point right now where regardless if there are snow days or not snow days, I would just like to have this as our permanent day for the students to be let out. Period, done, finished. The students are done that Wednesday. It's different for seniors. That hasn't changed, Kevin, so you're okay. But for everyone else, it would be that Wednesday if the board is okay with that. You don't have to include that in the motion, but that's the theory behind it, is that we're not going to come back to you and change the calendar again.
What does that mean if there was another snow day?
Well, theoretically, if the Senate proposal comes, the House has 3 days. Yeah, the House proposal comes through and that's what they adopt. Then we would have to be entitled to making up that day at some time. There is no penalty at the state for not making up those days, according to what we've learned now. So we would come back to you with the suggestion that we don't make that day up.
Right. So, and Todd, if the Senate bill passes and you can move forward or whatever the release date, you'd still stay at the 5th?
Yeah, you know, there's rationale for that too. Most of the schools, we have fewer days in our calendar than a lot of the schools around. So after these reductions, some schools may bump up, some may not, but we'll hit the 165, which is actually kind of right in the middle of where everybody is right now, even if they choose the Senate or the House for the other schools. So we think staying at that Wednesday is also prudent for the district to stick at the 165.
My only question to that is, one, the level of students that will actually show up anyways, ending school on a Wednesday, to be quite frank, with the number of families that have maybe already had vacation scheduled. And unless you tie finals to it, it is what it is. And second of all, do we have any idea the cost potentially to the district where if we can move it back up, how many staff members have maybe planned on going on a vacation, and how many subs are we bringing in that we would have to pay in the circumstance type of thing? I don't know. I don't think anybody's been polled or.
Yeah, there's been a few. We haven't had as many vacation requests as you may think. There hasn't been that many, but the cost for it is about $33,000 a day to make up from where we left off. That happens all the time, though. If we make up student days, it's going to be about $30,000 to $35,000 a day that you have to make up.
And you get to make another phone call to the community?
I do. I'll try to be as entertaining as I can.
Good luck.
So let me go back to that, so that I clearly understand this. If we could move it up, because the Senate allows us to, are you saying to have school on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday costs?
About $100,000. Yep, for the district.
And at this point, you're saying that those 3 days are worth $100,000?
I'm saying at this point,
We don't know yet.
We don't know.
No, but what you're telling me is, even if the Senate approved it, I thought you didn't want to revisit this.
Well, right, we
You
don't.
want Ryan up here next month.
Well, I mean, I'm not the board.
I'm just asking the question.
Yep. I would prefer to keep it as one date, so we don't change it for the fourth time.
Yeah.
Only because of the confusion that it could cause. Now, you bring up some very valid pieces too, but the flip side of it is that we can still make up 3 good days for the kids and have good quality days for those first 3 days in June. And that's a measure that you've been down. It's hard to explain that. Do you want to have 3 days of school, or do you want to pay $100,000 for those 3 days of school? Are those 3 days worth it or not worth it? If they're not worth it, why do we even have the statute in place to begin with? I don't know.
No, I'm just asking.
Yep.
The thing bouncing around in my head is we're going to cut $1.9 million tonight, and are those last 3 days in June worth $100,000? I don't know. Some will say yes, some will say no. I'm just
right. And that $100,000 would be a one-time expenditure, so it wouldn't have any effect theoretically on the cuts that we have for the following year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry to debate.
No, those are great questions. Yep.
So what's the motion on the table then? Is it to do that no matter what? Is that how the
nope,
motion was
it's not.
made?
It's just to go to June 5th right now.
Just to change the calendar to
Yep,
June 5th.
we can change it still, or you guys can come up and Mr. Curry and I can talk about that in April and change it. But my suggestion is not to change it, but you can change it. How's
the
that?
motion is to change it tonight, but we have
right now. Yep.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion?
We're currently at June 10th. June 10th.
Yep.
So this will be chiseled in very firm jello.
I hope so.
Probably in snow.
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item B, consider approval of amendment to the Faribault Lutheran Schools and Cannon River STEM School Extracurricular Participation Agreement 2018 to 2020. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
Just a quick comment. This is the trap, if you haven't seen it already, the trap shooting club for these 2 charter schools and for Faribault Lutheran School to be involved in that program.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Item C has been removed. Item D, consider approval of a Kita box. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Had to Google what the document meant, but I think I have a good idea now.
Mr. Chair, I'll just reiterate that this is coming out of the LTFM funding, not the general fund.
Okay, correct. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Brings us to item E, discussion of the agenda items listed before you. There are 8 items individual and then 9 a final consider reductions. A couple of preparatory comments on my part. We could handle this in a lot of different ways, so we're going to try this. But obviously we want the wishes of each board member to be represented and considered fairly. The 8 items were items that we generated as a board at our last meeting, and the administration has responded to those. You have seen proposed budget adjustments A, B, and C. And on there, most of these items, the administration has made a recommendation. So to give you an example, the first one is the Thought Exchange Program, and you will see the administration's recommendation is to eliminate or make that one of our reductions, to accept that as a reduction, and so forth down the list. The main differences in the items is is how we treat the long-term facility maintenance money. So item A has changed that amount to $33,400, and that allows the the list of A items to hit exactly our goal of $1,928,000 in reductions. Item B is basically the same plan, except it has a full $50,000 transfer from long-term facility maintenance to help with ongoing expenses. And that changes the reductions to $1,895,000. And item C is no LTFM transfer at all, and that makes our change $1,945,000, which is in excess of what our goal was. So those are the three basic plans. The interior part of all these are basically the same. Now, as we go through these items, item by item, just a couple things to consider as part of regular procedures. If an item were brought forward for consideration and isn't moved and seconded, then we would not discuss it, would not vote on it. But if it's, for example, item 1, the thought exchange, it would remain on the administration recommendation. Okay? But any item can be moved and seconded, and we will discuss and vote on each individual item of the 8 here. At the end, we ultimately will be picking Schedule A, B, or C, and in doing so, any changes we decide along the way will be incorporated as amendments to A, B, or C at the time. Just making any sense? Okay, everybody agree on that? I'll point out that these are not roll call votes, but it is required to record individual votes. So if the vote is 6-1 and Curry votes no, then it's recorded as 6-1, Curry voting no. If Curry was the only one voting yes, it would be 1-6, Curry voting, and then we assume that the rest of the board is in the other numbers. Okay? Any questions on any of this before we start?
Are you keeping track of those?
Yeah, it's just verbal, and
okay.
Kathy will be recording that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, so from what I'm understanding here, so first we're going to go over item E, the 1 through 8, and then one at a time, and then when we get to item 9, will we be able, I would like to see each option placed on the screen and gone over lightly, because I know we're going to go through this again, just to see exactly, so the people at home and everyone here have a real solid vision of what's on the table, etc. And then my second request was, because of this, I would like to request that each of these 1 through 9 be a roll call vote.
We certainly can do that, I believe.
Yeah, usually you request it right after each motion, just do a roll call.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, so we vote and it's 7, we say it's 4-3, then a member can say roll call vote. Because if it's 7-0, there's no reason to have a roll call. Does that make sense? So we'll vote, and then if you want to have individual members state how they voted, then you request a roll call.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And as far as your first request, I'm not sure I understand.
Not sure either, but
maybe John, can I help with it too and just chime in?
I just want number 9 when we're voting on attachment with the budget adjustments option A, that it's put on the screen and we go through each thing in that option, and even though we've probably discussed it before, whatever, just so everyone sees it and is locked in and knows exactly where we're at. That's my request.
I don't know that, are we prepared to put it on the screen?
We have, there's 2 things. We don't have it prepared yet to go up on the big screen. We could probably figure that out. The other thing is it's on the document electronically. We could advise people to go to the district website and pull it up on their own, or do you want it on the big screen? It's up to you guys.
Can somebody not just log in though to the board book on there?
Oh yeah, we could do it on the machine there. I think we can wait. Oh, hold on. I get it.
But again, as I see this, at the end, we're going to be saying, somebody will move, I move for option B in terms of these 3 plans, and then amend that with the things that we come up with as we go through these things.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Are we about ready then? Is everybody ready?
Courtney took a quick break.
No, we do, but we can start, I think. Okay. So item E1, consideration to discontinue thought exchange program. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Okay, and just for clarification, the administration's recommendation is to reduce or cut this program and save that dollars. Okay, discussion.
Could I ask to be reminded what the cost of thought exchange is?
Yes. Hold on.
16,000.
No.
About 16,000, yes.
Oh, 15.
It was a larger
15.7
software
was
cost.
right.
It was part of it.
Any further discussion? Okay, we are voting on discontinuing the thought exchange program. So this is a vote to cut this program. Okay? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Item 2, consideration to wait to implement common planning time at the elementary schools next fall. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
This is one area I have grave concerns about. I think I am encouraged that there is interest in common planning time at the elementary schools. However, if we wait until fall to make a decision about this, what would the timeline be that could be implemented?
Ryan, you want to go over what we talked about at Cabinet about timelines and trying to figure out how we can get the common planning time implemented in the elementary schools?
The biggest component, obviously, is getting whether transportation is there or whether, you know, the talk around doing 1 day a week, if it was similar to the high school. The high school, in this situation, the busing still runs the same. Students come into the building, and so either the logistics around at the elementary, what will those students do when they come in, or does the busing change and alter? And that's the biggest part of the timeline, is what the busing company can, they have to have time to run through the scenarios, and can they do all of the runs in time? In the past, the early childhood McKinley, where they would come back and do another run, that has been something that they've struggled to work through, and we're in that conversation. It's just we don't have a solution to it yet.
So what do you need to know to have the solution?
I think one thing...
Beyond transportation.
Yeah, I think one thing we need to know is if we can have an MOU signed by the teachers union to shift the times for that. Nicole has talked to a few folks on that as well. So we need some buy-in from the teachers union.
Yeah, and we've been in conversation. We've had some of that initial conversation. Part of it is knowing that the logistics will work before we then dive into what would that look like with a contract.
And I guess I would wonder what it would mean for families. I mean, if you would you just have a late bus that 1 day?
If we did it the 1 day a week, it would be something similar. We have neighboring districts that do something similar to that. If we did it across the board, it could just be the start time for all.
And can I just remind the board too, is that we brought these questions to you guys to react today on those. A lot of these things, depending on funding, depending on Nicole and Ryan's work, those could change in the next 2 months too.
And to be clear, there's no dollar figure associated with this.
No.
Okay.
No. I just see that there's such opportunity that exists. Our elementary students unfortunately come to us with a great number of needs, and we have a passionate staff that's willing to stay a couple times a month right now to do this. And yet we all know after a day of work, sometimes that's less beneficial than at other times. I just believe that we should offer, if at all possible, this same benefit to the students in elementary for their teachers to be able to plan strategically for them.
And I, as a board member, I'm not saying I wouldn't support it in the future. I just feel at the time we need to make a few steps towards it.
I would say that if it is a decision is made to do this, to start this in the middle of the year is not a good idea. If you're talking elementary students, you're really all students, but you're talking about disrupting their schedule, whatever. You either start at the beginning of the year, so the benefit is the whole year, or you wait, or not at all. I just don't believe anything good starts in the middle of the year, or in March, or whatever, so, yeah.
So is it impossible to consider this for the fall of 2019?
Absolutely not.
And an MOU can be negotiated and decided at any time?
So on the management part, yes. On the teacher side, I can't say that, yes or no. I think one of the things we want, we've had a very positive relationship with all of our unions in our schools. And I'd like to make sure that we give that time so that we continue that support and make sure that they're all on board.
So is it possible that we could consider a proposal to begin considering this now, even if it doesn't mean it's implemented for the fall of 2019? At least we begin the action now?
I would love to see a 7-0 vote support from all board members saying that we should go ahead and start this now. That would be terrific to know that the board is behind us 100%. That hasn't always been like that.
In terms of continuing to push it forward.
Correct.
So we have one agenda item first.
Yeah, just philosophically and those that have been involved in education, sometimes it's okay to get directive and support from the board, but you always want to make sure that the people that are directly involved in this support this too. So it's not like we're directing that whole process. You know what I mean? So either way is fine with me. I think that the staff would understand that support from the board too.
To our retired educators on this board, to your knowledge, has this district ever had CPT time at the elementary schools during your tenure?
No.
No.
I made a comment at the last meeting that I guess I've lived through this. And what we did was shorten the student day, number of minutes, move the student day later in the morning, required teachers to come in earlier, allowed them to leave shortly after the students left the building, required agreement with the union, but it was a one building school, it was one union, it was 7 buses, not
a lot.
Not a lot. And that was for the purpose of allowing for professional learning community time. Don't know, they may have gotten rid of it the day I left town, but it was possible. I really doubt that I would support it because I think it's a great thing to allow teachers to have time common with the other people in that building that work with the same students. That's the key factor. So I certainly would support looking at that. I don't see any way that it could be pulled off for next year.
Keep in mind too that our buses run at Faribault BA, STEM school, Nurse Strand. They all are included in our bus schedule. We're required to have those transports. So it does make it a challenge. And if we're going to be common planning time, the other schools have the same thing too. So,
Todd, I don't know how it works, but I do believe if there's a will, there's a way. And if it's, in theory, that beneficial, then I think at some point we should examine it sooner than later. Other schools are what they are. They're part of our community. But we have to look out for what's best for our students, our staff, our districts.
So if I vote in favor of this consideration to wait to implement common planning time, I am saying you don't have to put it in next year.
Correct.
If I vote against this, am I saying you have to put it in next year?
No. You can make an amendment to whatever clarification you want to make for that. I just tried to put it into a statement that was kind of in the middle there.
I'll make an amendment to my motion, right? I made the original motion.
Mm-hmm.
So I would amend it that, how do we word this?
You can withdraw the motion too and start over again too if you want.
But I think this states that we will consider to wait to implement. Right? I mean, there's no formality here other than we're not doing it today.
Let's vote on this one and have another motion.
All right.
Yeah, that's a good idea, John.
So what are we doing? We're withdrawing this motion?
Well, you could, or you can vote it down like John suggested and then come up with another motion.
Let's vote it down and then.
But
Shouldn't it say?
But if we vote the way the motion and the second is, all we're doing is saying we are not going to implement this today, that we're looking at this later in the fall.
It doesn't prohibit us from implementing it.
Correct.
That's how I understood it, that it wouldn't prohibit us from implementing it if.
But there's no impetus in this agenda item to start the work to ready for it.
I appreciate that the administration has every intent to try and make this happen. So it's a consideration, and it seems to me that we could say something if we vote this one down or whatever, you could amend it. But it seems to me if it would be that the board encourages the administration to continue working to see if we can get fall implementation or whatever.
Yeah, that would include all staff on it, so it's not just us.
Yes,
of course.
Yeah.
Something to that. I mean, it doesn't hold you to it, but it says the administration will move forward in exploring that.
You bet.
Mr. Chair.
Figured out.
Okay, I'm thinking I'd like to see common planning time at the elementary schools. I don't think you should try to do it next fall.
Okay.
And so I think I would vote affirmatively on this, and then perhaps at a next board meeting, or I don't know if we do it, we have a separate item that addresses what we want the district to do on common planning time for elementary schools. My point being is that there's no financial consideration. We're here to make reductions to the budget. There's no financial impact of this statement. And like most everything we do tonight, we can change. The only thing that we have to do tonight is determine the number of people that have to be put on unrequested leave of absence. That's required by statute. It has to happen soon. We can't undo that next meeting. We can undo just about everything else we're talking about tonight in the future. That doesn't mean I'm encouraging you to bring everything back at every meeting as we go forward, but does that make sense? So what do we want to do? Do we want to withdraw this altogether, or do we want to vote on this motion?
Mr. Chair, I call the question.
Okay. So, all right. So the question has been called, and it is, we're approving the administration's recommendation to wait to implement common planning time at the elementary schools.
But calling the question needs a second as well.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose, same sign.
Mr. Chair, we're voting on the motion to call the question, correct? Because we need 2/3 of a vote to end the debate.
We had a motion and a second for number 2. And I thought when you called the question, that means vote.
I called the
yes
question, calling the question is to end the debate.
Oh.
And so you need to vote a second and a 2/3 vote to end the debate.
Okay.
And when that happens, then we can go, if that happens, then we can go back to our original motion.
Could I have just said any further discussion? Hearing none, let's vote.
I called the question.
Okay. And there was a second?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor of calling the question ending the debate signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Now to the motion that exists, and that is to wait to implement common planning time. Everybody clear on that?
No, I don't think I'm clear on what I'm voting for.
Well, unfortunately, the question's been called.
Sorry, he asked.
Yep.
I just want to make sure I understand when I vote no on this consideration, that it's coming back for another agenda item in 2 weeks that we're going to vote on.
You can add, it can be added to any agenda in the future anytime. Okay. But what you're voting on is to wait to implement common planning time. Okay? End of discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Nay.
Okay?
Mr. Chair, roll call, please.
Yeah. Okay, you can call the names.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. What did we just do? I mean, I can check yes, no.
We had a vote, and it is a divided vote to consider to wait to implement common planning time. I couldn't tell if it's 4-3 or whatever it is.
Yeah, and again, this is at this time because the board requested this information right now.
So,
So you guys requested it.
Say,
if you say no or yes, basically if you say no to this, you are saying that you could interpret it as that we need to get common planning time put into next fall. That's how we could interpret it. If you say yes to this, then you're saying to the administration, let's wait and take a look at this and see whether or not we can make common planning time next fall work.
So, okay, with that said, Mr. Chair, John Bellingham.
Nay.
Courtney Cavalier.
Nay.
John Curry.
Aye.
Jason Engbrecht. Yvette Marthaler.
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway.
Nay.
You have a coin I can flip here?
Chad Wolf.
Chad Wolf, yeah, sorry. I got it here. Yes pushes it out till the fall? No says we're not doing anything at this time?
Yes basically means we're going to wait at this time, at this point, but in a month I could bring it back and say we got it.
Okay, yes. Mr. Chair, this passes 4-3.
Okay, thank you. Item 3, consideration not to implement 6-period day at the middle school without common planning time, or a 7-period day without CPT, which I assume means common planning time. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, members of the general public, I'm speaking against this motion. I'm going to keep my comments germane to the motion itself, as I don't wish to birdwalk on any of the points which we've discussed. I'm not here to discuss or debate the merits of common planning time. I've tried very hard in these reductions to support reductions where there is not face-to-face contact or interaction between teachers and students. In reducing over $1.9 million, and I've done a lot of research and communication with staff, administration, and outside sources. I do not believe, from my research, I believe this is costing the district about $130,000 to $260,000. I do not believe at this time we can afford this. There's a better use of taxpayer money when there are alternatives that would cost the district little or nothing, and at the same time keep exploratory, now called electives, in place. Again, I speak against the motion.
Okay.
I too value common planning time at every level in the district. I think it serves students well. The difficulty for me is that we are cutting, and other districts with higher operating levies have determined they can't afford it. And so it seems incumbent on us that we look at options that would enable us to save the money and allow our staff to provide options that would still maintain a 7-period day. It is possible. Perhaps we wouldn't have the same savings as what Mr. Bellingham alluded to, and yet I believe it does represent some kind of savings. That information has not been fully provided to us, in my estimation, on what could be saved if common planning time was eliminated. But I think it's something we really need to consider reducing based on the cost. And again, I say I don't know what the cost is. That has not been provided. But obviously it does represent a cost.
Going down the line here, Mr. Chair. We spoke about this one at length whenever we last met, 2 weeks or so ago. We had a fair amount of middle school staff in here. Rightfully so, I would anticipate a fair amount of them to support this as it is at their building. I said then, I'll say it now, something very difficult for me to completely wrap my head around is I've had former teachers that taught me on both sides of the fence on this. I've had friends, emails, phone calls, and for me in a situation like this, I'm going to defer back to what our administration recommends in a case like this, because I simply just don't know what is totally right, what is not right. All of these are painful, and this is another painful one that we're discussing tonight. So.
If we're going down the line, I'm next, I guess. I'm a little bit confused. If we went to a 7-period day without common planning time, how does that save money? Does it not just reduce the electives kids are taking and put them in study halls?
Yes.
Only if you choose to have study halls. Do you have to have licensed teachers to conduct a study hall, or are you going to go para?
It would probably a licensed teacher. I can't imagine, and I don't want to say anything negative about paras, but I know that a licensed teacher in a study hall has the training and the management skills in order to conduct that piece. So I would argue that it would have to be a teacher.
So then if you have a teacher, let's have an elective teaching, or them teaching an elective.
Then they're picking up a 7th hour, right?
Yes.
Or you're hiring more staff to fill that spot. Or an elective is what you're saying, instead of the study hall.
And some students may want to study hall.
But again, isn't the effect just to reduce the number of electives a kid can take? If we keep a 7-period day? Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, having the 7 slots without a common planning time, that slot of a teacher's schedule would be a study hall. So we would have a minimum of 4 and maximum of 11 spots every hour for students to take a study hall. If they have the study halls and the electives, would give us anywhere between 12 and 17 spots for students to go. With the bigger numbers, very low.
Okay, an additional comment is that it's ironic that we're considering going from a 7-period day to a 6-period day at the middle school. At the same time, we're considering asking the voters to approve, we may be asking the voters to approve a levy to go from 6 periods to 7 periods at the high school for the purpose of providing more electives. And then finally, the program that's in place at the middle school took, I'm guessing, over a year and a half of work with the staff, with the administration, with parents to come up with that plan. And so for us on, what is it, March 25th, is that right? And I understand, I don't believe that we can instruct the administration to implement a 6-period day at the middle school for next year. So those are my thoughts.
So that's how we're doing.
You are allowed to pass if you'd like.
No, I won't pass. So I think two things are staying in my mind, some of which has already been said. I also, I was around when the current middle school model was put into place. It felt like a very positive thing at the time. That opinion of mine has not changed. Since then, I'm really reluctant to remove that at this point when I feel like we are still doing enough budget-wise to address our budget situation without doing it, given the current proposal. I also point out it's striking to me we're already reducing at the middle school for FTE, which is pretty much in proportion with how our reductions are going other places in the district. To add to that 2 or 3 or 4 more FTE in reduction from the middle school strikes me as out of proportion to where we're making cuts across the district, and it's not a direction I want to go at this time. So I'm not sensing a motivation or a strong need at this point to make that change. I cannot commit that would be my feeling in future years, knowing that we may face similar decisions in future years. But at this time, I'm simply not interested in making that level of reductions at the middle school and the what feels like a really strong impact to a program that is just getting its footing at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similar to John and Jason, I was certainly on the board when we began the discussions about changing the middle school and what we could do to support the students and the staff there. And I would like to see another year of implementation of that program. I've had similar experience with people on both sides of the issue, obviously emailing us or talking with us. So as Chad had said, I would support the administration and the leadership of the buildings to keep that in place at this time.
I also don't feel like I have clarity on this issue regarding the finances involved or the impact on the school. I think I was pretty clear that I asked for some way for the school to show me what these cuts would feel like and what it would mean. I can't remember exactly the words I asked for, but I think you questioned back exactly what I meant, and I feel like I got that from the staff at the middle school more than I got from anyone else. So I appreciate the emails from the staff who reached out to us. I also am reluctant to rock the boat at the middle school given the progress the school is seeing and the fact that we already have teacher cuts at the middle school level. That being said, I also agree that this issue needs to be looked at, and I'd like to have a full understanding of the financial impact of this in the coming months so we're prepared for the cuts in 2020. For me, that doesn't mean verbal answers in this meeting, but some kind of visual report that actually shows me what the impact is. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion.
May I just have one question about the clarifying sheet that came out about the effects of class size ratios for core classes would be 23 to 28. The question I have is, it says electives would have 7 to 11 students per section. I don't understand that.
You guys, Mike or Kelly, or you guys want to, why don't you have a mic? You guys speak at the mic.
Yeah, the numbers are with the common planning time removed and staying with the 7-period day. But again, that slot would have to be filled with something for the teachers. And so that something would be the study hall. If we keep if we keep the current elective offerings that we have and then add 4, 5, 10 study halls to that hour, obviously there's only so many students that get placed into those offerings.
So what will the student ratio be in electives if CPT remains?
We were reducing, the proposal has a reduction of 1 elective, and so those numbers, again, depending on the numbers that go into band, choir, and orchestra, those numbers we would see between 18 to 24, I think would be a fair number. We could have some of our highly requested courses go up towards a 26 to 28.
And then there would be some with, what would your minimum number of students be? I mean, do you have a policy around that? I mean, kind of a working practice?
Probably more of a working practice. Again, if our students are taking our band, choir, orchestra, that's more students into those sections. And so that continues to drive what we're looking at as far as the students remaining that would be into the other classes. We have our AVID that's in there as well, and our AVID numbers are increasing. So there's different factors in there. I guess the question, is there a policy? Yeah, I guess we want to put as many kids into those classes as we can, and so reducing one elective will obviously reduce the number of choices, and so the numbers should maintain at that 18 to 22.
Thanks.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of, careful now.
It's very tricky.
Mr. Chair, sorry, just one more question. Could we clarify what a yes and a no vote is in this case?
That's kind of what I wanted to do too. If you vote yes on this, you are accepting the administration's recommendation to not implement a 6-period day or a 7-period day at the middle school.
Without
CEP2.
So essentially it means continuing as is.
Yes.
A yes vote continues as is. A no vote would require them to implement one of those two.
Correct.
Is that right? Everybody clear? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, I believe it was 5-2 with Treadway and Bellingham voting negative, 9. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Item 4, consideration to use $33,400 of long-term facility money to offset director of building and ground salary by the same amount, $33,400.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that we use $50,000 of the long-term FML towards the budget.
Okay.
Which is increasing the amount listed in this, but I thought I would make that motion first, since that was my intention to make that motion.
Okay, I know where you want to go. How do we get there?
Right, get a second.
Okay, it's not been moved and seconded on what I propose.
Right.
Okay.
Was it seconded? No, it hasn't been seconded yet. No one seconded.
You need it.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
It's been moved. You seconded which motion?
No.
I'm moving that we use $50,000 for the total.
Okay, Yvette has moved that we change the $33,400 to a number of $50,000. Is that correct, Yvette?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Now, discussion.
Can I ask why?
Why?
Why the proposal to 50,000 instead of the 33,400? Is there a rationale there?
I'd like to see some additional funding for my overall intention for the budget.
Okay.
And I feel that we have cut in a lot of areas, and I think that we should go for the maximum amount in this area.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I remember correctly, the administration's original recommendation was the $50,000, correct? Okay. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair, so I want to ask Jennifer, so we went from 50,000 to 33,400. How did we get to that? What was the rationale for that?
So the rationale for that was in option A when we get to the next section. And that was the amount needed to get back to our original board approved target. So if we reduced from 50,000, which was in the very original amount, down to 33,400. That difference gets us exactly back to the 1.928 million that was the target.
Thank you.
If we go with the 50,000 and we make no other changes, that will actually increase our target a little bit from where we were.
Say that again?
Will it increase?
So then it would really go to option C.
With no,
If we go to 50 instead of the 33,400.
Yeah, if Yvette's motion is approved, that transfers 50,000, then our reduction is $1.895 million.
Goes above it.
No, it goes to $1.945 million. It's really the option C.
Yep, okay. Okay, further discussion.
So what we're saying, I think I read in one of the emails or rationale here, is we have $71 million in improvements within the district. So I think the rationale was 33,400 was a drop in the bucket, or 50,000 is a drop in the bucket. Basically, that's what was said, correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't use those terms because it's all important money, and we always want to use those, the taxpayer money as fiscally responsible as we can. And we, I mean, if we don't get this approved, we can use it for LTFM in a heartbeat. So it's always going to be used for a good purpose. On the other hand, we are making a lot of cuts too, and it could help offset some of the cuts.
But the rationale in the email was $71 million in improvements, and that 33,400 or 50,000 was minute, and the 71 million would be able to make up for whatever we had.
Yep, it'd be minimal impact on the total list.
Yep.
Yes.
But also in the recommendation, it also said that this is an amount to help us keep some of the other items.
Okay, thank you.
The cabinet recommendation is to do this in order to keep programming and class sizes at lower levels.
Can I ask for some clarification about the options and looking at ways to deal with the 0.5 PE teacher? If we move 50,000 into the LTFM, does it help resolve that? Could you just clarify that one more time for me?
Our proposal with the 0.5 PE teacher is to draw more out of the OPEB irrevocable trust to make up the difference for adding back a 0.5 FPE teacher.
So if we were to move the $50,000 to LTFM, we would still solve for that through the irrevocable trust?
Those are the options that we have in front of us tonight. Not that they can't be changed, but that's...
I don't mean to make it a secret. I intend to vote for both of them with the hopes that there might be some funds for an additional position. That's my hope.
I agree with you that. I think we're making deep cuts across the school district. It's no secret that I have young children in the elementary schools. I understand that the district's been working incredibly hard to improve at the middle school, and that we have work we want to do to improve programming at the high school level. I think this is logical, and I agree with you that I'll be supporting that.
And just to simplify, LTFM, $50,000, implicit fund on the OPEB, what those are doing is taking dollars from funds that are not allowed, unassigned, and moving them into general fund, and whether you think it's paying for the FIED teacher or adding back another teacher, moot point. It's going into the general fund, thereby reducing the amount that we're reducing what we spend on teachers and things like that. Yes. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, I have one more question. So, Jennifer, regardless of what cuts we make here,
yes,
we're still in deficit spending for next year, right around 430,000. Am I correct in that number?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Is there further discussion on the Yvette motion, officially called that now, to transfer $50,000 from LTFM funds to the general fund?
From unassigned.
No, I'm sorry.
From unassigned to LTFM.
General, yeah. I'm sorry. I said it backwards.
Yes.
Yep. Yes. So we're going to use some of those dollars to pay
expenditures that are currently in unassigned will
Okay.
be moved to a restricted LTFM.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Nay.
And I believe that is 6-1 with Mr. Bellingham voting no. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Number 5, consider English language reduction. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
At the last work session, I think I had asked for how much time, how many minutes per day do elementary teachers have students without any EL, SPED, para support. I think we have to make these reductions, and yet these reductions also mean fewer resources for our classroom teachers. We have to do it. So I'm not pushing back, but I would like that information. Particularly, I mean, this does not, well, the paras do affect the elementary, but I've been an elementary teacher. I know how difficult it is to be in the classroom with many and varied needs and not have additional resource people available. So that's just something that I'd like to know.
And we have been in conversation, definitely with Jefferson in particular, what the impact of the two paras. The reality is, there's always going to be an impact. It will be us being more efficient with our time, and in some cases too, looking at, we had a newcomer program that was in the building. That program is not active right now. We absorbed a lot of that resource, and so it is looking at how are we best utilizing our paras. And so it's not to say that there won't be an impact, but we do think that it will be a smaller impact than we are looking at it to be not as big of an impact. Let's put it that way.
I appreciate Ms. Treadway's comments. I also have concerns about the number of support staff that are that we reduce by in the coming years as we look at increased class size across the district. You heard Ms. Kylan today say that her small groups were not small groups. So I also, again, in preparation for the cuts for next year, would like to see what you wrote for us around the 5th grade at, with the 28 in terms of exactly the percentage of time that teachers have support in the classroom. This is particularly at the elementary school, but I would love some way to understand what it looks like in other grades so that I have a better understanding of this for next year when we approach this issue again.
Further discussion? Okay, so we are voting to essentially leave the EL department reductions of $250,000 in the plan. Is that everybody's understanding? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Item 6, consider changing the high school league target, from 1.5 to 1.0, $32,500 based on the registration number for physical education. Is there a motion to consider this item?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
I appreciate the work that you did to respond to the concern from our last meeting and find a solution to resolve this. That's all.
Okay, all those in favor, okay, making sure now. We're changing their reduction from 1.5 to 1.0. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 7, consider not to add back one more elementary teacher, Roosevelt. So this could be termed as the board could decide to add one more teacher back or not add one back, and the administration recommendation is to not add one back. And this is probably a result of the change from the meeting earlier that we saw appear on February 25th, in which one FTE was added to Jefferson and one to Lincoln. And Roosevelt was not in that list, and so administration is still recommending that we do not add back one more elementary teacher. Discussion.
We don't have a motion.
You want a discussion before the motion?
Oh, sorry. Let's, yeah, somebody move this?
No.
No, nobody has yet.
Oh, all right. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second so we can discuss it.
So the motion is not to add back the teacher.
Correct. Discussion? It's been moved and seconded.
Well, Mr. Chair, as I mentioned earlier, I made that motion regarding the long-term facilities, and I intend to support a motion to increase the transfer from OPEC. In fact, I would question if that transfer can go even a little higher, but maybe I'm asking my question too late, and I apologize for that. But I would like to see a teacher at Roosevelt, so I would vote against that motion.
So just to clarify, maybe you can tell us what our implicit rate is total that we can pull out of OPEB and what we're currently proposing so that the board has an understanding of what that is. I think that's what you're getting to.
I'm asking it out of turn, I understand.
That's right.
Sure, no, it's good to have the information. So far what we've proposed, we can take we have 2 allowable things that we can pull out of the irrevocable trust. Our pay-as-you-go amount, which is just right around $200,000, a little bit more. And that's kind of the number we've been talking about all along. That's actual cash out of the district that happens every year for our retirees. We can also pull out of the irrevocable trust the value of our implicit rate subsidy. And that's about $417,000. So potentially, we could pull out of the irrevocable trust over $600,000.
And what's the total amount that's in our OPEB account now?
Well, it just went up a little bit. The initial investment was $2.451 million, and we're about at 2.4.
And how much of that is in the irrevocable trust?
That entire amount is in the irrevocable trust.
Okay. But the amount that we can pull out to pay current expenses
could be up to
plus the implicit rate is up to 400.
Well, no, the total amount we can pull out is the pay-as-you-go amount of $200,000 plus the implicit rate of $400,000.
Oh, so over
$600,000. So we could pull out over $600,000.
Okay. Back to this item, and that is adding back one more teacher at Roosevelt. Discussion.
Ryan, can you help me out here? If we add one more back, what does that mean to class sizes? I get it, they go down, but what are class sizes projected to be at? Mr. Tenaglia came in here and spoke. Mrs. Kylan spoke. I know we saw at least one, if not several, emails about this. And what do class sizes look like if we do not add one more teacher back?
So the assumption is that the class you target is a class of, right now is an average of 26. At 4th grade, that would drop it to an average of 20, having 4 classrooms of that.
Okay.
You know, one of the things to consider there, though, is that Jefferson has 2 grade levels that have an average of 26.
With bringing one teacher back as well?
If you brought one teacher back, the question, if you put them at Roosevelt, Roosevelt would not have any classes above that 26 number. But Jefferson has 2 grade levels that are at an average of 26. So if you brought that teacher back, where should they go?
So we've already brought back 2 teachers. So let's just say that seems to be a given at 5th grade at Jefferson and Lincoln. So that brings down 5th grade classes to 21, 21, and 24 at Jefferson, Lincoln, and Roosevelt.
Right.
We have class sizes now projected at Jefferson in 3rd and 4th grade to be 26. And then the only other 26 we have at the elementary would be 4th grade Roosevelt.
class sizes this year of that 26, 27, 28 number at Roosevelt?
Yes.
Yes.
See nodding heads.
And typically, what kind of August enrollments do you have? I mean, are there a lot of surprise newbies coming on?
Our trend over the last few years has been, we've been high on the number or at our target number, and that 3 weeks to a month in, we're already below.
Okay.
So, you know, as we talked about in previous board meetings, the trend that we have over the last couple of years is actually that we'll have a lower number. So,
given the fact that this does not, changing this would not force us to put anybody on unrequested leave, which is the only thing we have to decide tonight, and that as the summer progresses, this board has the option of adding back this teacher or any other teachers if we deem prudent. I'm sensing that we should not choose to add back one more teacher at this time because we can change it.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think Mr. Ronayne back there, principal of Roosevelt, was going to try to say something.
Give the mic, Terry.
Yeah. First, I'll just say, if you could clarify the statement you just made, John, regarding that, about not putting someone on unrequested leave if we don't.
Yeah, and I shouldn't even mention that term because I know what it means. The board tonight is required to determine how many positions are going to be reduced, thereby resulting in some actual names, and we have a special board meeting tomorrow night to approve those. That's the only thing we are required. We can add this teacher anytime we'd like to if we find it necessary, or any others.
But by leaving it at 2 reductions at Roosevelt and FT, then there would, right now, there would be 2 teachers that would be on the list for tomorrow night. If we go back, if the motion that Yvette is putting forward about not, then we would only have 1. Is that correct?
Yeah, so right now there's the current proposal is to have 2 teachers less at Roosevelt.
Correct.
Yep. And by this one, what you just said?
It would be 1.
It'd be 1.
Okay. And the only other clarification question is, a comment would be that as we went through this process, we had kindergarten kind of out of play, right? Because it's a crapshoot at best. Roosevelt is currently a building that has 3 kindergarten sections. Okay, and I've done my due diligence, I believe, even though it's incomplete in regard to where we're at right now. I'm pretty firm in saying to you right now, my class sizes at Roosevelt in kindergarten are likely to be 21 next year with possibilities. But what you said is you can add back later in the summer if those numbers are proven to you and they're in and they've signed the forms and that is out. But in the current situation of 19 sections at Roosevelt planned for next year with the current enrollments, my understanding, and I don't have the firm numbers, is that the overall building class size average is higher at Roosevelt than any of the other 2 buildings. As a building, if you look at individual classrooms, you know, there's some that are higher, but as a building with 19 sections divided by, you know, 467 or so students, we're at about, you know, 24.5 about. Don't quote me on that exactly, but something to be in consideration as well. So I think Ryan's comment was accurate that in the 4th grade next year, as of current numbers as of today, we'll have 2 sections of 26, 1 section of 27. If the, you know, who are in the seats today are also in the seats next year. So those, I guess, are my only comments.
Mr. Sessier, if we brought 1 back and we lowered the class sizes to that, you know, 22-ish, then my understanding is there's a couple classes at Jefferson that are portrayed to be around 26.
Correct.
Or projected, I should say, not portrayed. I don't know what Lincoln looks like in that scenario, but is there a possibility where 1 or 2 kids may move to another school to lessen that impact, and maybe the average is 24, and I know you might be opening Pandora's box. But I'm just trying to figure out a balancing act here and what that looks like, and maybe you have some that are willing to, maybe you have some that aren't. I know we did the boundaries a couple years ago, but the numbers are what they are, and we're trying to juggle what we have to where we're at in the present day.
Yeah, and we have been doing it. I've loosened up the policy a little bit over the last few months to allow that to happen. We have that every once in a while during the year. The difficulty comes when the parents really, really love Roosevelt, and they want to go, they'll go to Roosevelt if class sizes are 30 or 31. And they like that environment, and I would never advocate for that. But so it almost has to be done prior to parents or students moving into the district. The kids that are already established at Roosevelt, it's really, really difficult to pull them out and tell them to go to a different school.
Yeah, and I guess I'm more so asking if we added one back to Roosevelt, what happens to those couple larger class sizes at Jefferson? And I think it's a big feather in the cap and great job to any school that can continue to educate kids at 30 or whatever and still have parents and students still want to go there. So that's awesome, but more so if we add one back to Roosevelt, what happens to those couple larger sizes, larger classes at Jefferson?
Yeah, I'm assuming that the board doesn't want me to force kids to move. I mean, we could do that. I don't think the board wants us to do that.
No, but I mean, I would suspect that there might be an opportunity where, you know, you end up with two kids switching schools if it's put out there, if that's available. But once again, maybe you open Pandora's box. And
no, we're already doing that now.
Okay.
So we've been doing that this last 6 months, kind of bending the policy rules for that. It kind of brings us back to the discussion we had a few years ago when we talked about a school that has kindergarten, first grade, a school with second and third grade, and a school with fourth and fifth grade to eliminate a lot of these different issues that we're talking about right now. But we like our neighborhood schools too, and they have a lot of value to them. Oh, I was going to ask you that to get this is the class size ratio information for you.
So the top set of numbers is what we had originally proposed. The next set is adding back the 2 FTE at 5th grade, what everything was.
I want to just point out a couple of things. It's always nice to get perspective too, right? And Courtney and I talked about this a little bit too. The perspective of the entire budget, it's $1.92 million, right? And that's the target that we have. We have over a $50 million budget. We don't know if the state's going to give us 3% or 2%. We don't know if the state's going to give us special education funding or not. We don't know if the state's going to give us more EL funding that I testified for up at the state capitol. All those things could come, right? We also don't know if we're going to get up more kids next year, a better projection than what we have too. There's the bottom line that we have is we have a ton of variables that are out there. If we go back 4 years ago, we ended up $1 million in the surplus, right? So sometimes we think about, I know we're going to be maybe $300,000, $400,000 projected budget next year, but we won't really know that until we get the audit back. So.
And we'll know what we have for next year after this session at the budget. I mean, in May, we should know what changes happen. That's what I'm trying to say. We can know how we have.
And what I'm trying to say too is I'm okay. You're not offending the administration if you bring these staff members back, but at least you do it consciously, knowing what you're going to be up against next year. And we do have some things like OPEB that we can draw from. I would warn you not to take too much of that, because in those A+ ratings and those AAA ratings that you get for that low interest rate, if you ever want to get a bond issue passed, you need those ratings high. So you still have to be financially acceptable, but put it in perspective. It's a $50 million budget, and you're cutting 1.9 already. You've already got $16,000, right? And we're using, so it's another $49,000 that you're looking at out of a $50 million budget.
Well, I think this conversation started because we made a recommendation that the 28 at 5th grade was too high, and I appreciate the work that was done to find a solution to not go to 28. That left one school without a reprieve from the cuts. So we went from 6 projected elementary school cuts to 4, with 2 schools getting 1 teacher back and 1 school not getting 1 teacher back. I think that's problematic. We can't solve for all of the 26s, but I think we can do something for each school. I'd love to solve for all the 26s, but I understand we have to make cuts. So if I did it wrong in terms of making the motion to take this motion so that we could discuss it, My intention here was to discuss it and to vote no on this resolution. It bothers me that the principals are required to make their decision about assignment in May, given the fluctuation of our numbers and the fact that it could turn out that these 26s at Jefferson and Lincoln aren't 26s and the 26s are somewhere else. I hope there can be a solution to that in the future. I can certainly understand why teachers advocate for their rights in the district, of course, at the same time. I hope you all will call your legislature. This is incredibly upsetting and frustrating. And I've made my calls and I've made my emails and I've put form letters in and I've done everything I can, and I hope everybody watching and everybody in the audience will do the same thing. My intention here is to vote no on this resolution and to look for 3 elementary cuts instead of 6 total. So advise me about what I need to do, if I need to withdraw my resolution or amend my resolution.
Yep, we had a motion and a second so that we could discuss it.
Then we can just vote on it and I'll vote no. I believe 26 is too high at the elementary level, and I understand we can't fix all of them, but I think we should fix every single one that we can. And in this case, I think the only reasonable way is to fix 3.
So, Mr. Chair, if I'm reading this right, when this goes to vote, if you vote no, you're voting to potentially add 1 back.
We'll need a motion.
Correct?
Yeah, and you're, well, let me put it in another perspective too. If you vote against this motion, then you're telling Nicole that she doesn't have to tell that person that they're going to be placed on unrequested leave. That means that Terry, when he if it's with Roosevelt, we're assuming that he won't have to have another layoff for a teacher. But then we're done. You can't go back on that.
Do we have to vote on this, or can she amend the motion?
We need to vote on this one.
I think you want to vote on this one, and then just let me clarify again, one more time, ask questions. So if you vote no on this, you're voting to only have Terry ask for 1 layoff at Roosevelt. That's how we're interpreting it as cabinet members.
Instead of 2.
Instead of 2. So it'll be 1 less person that we're going to be laying off.
Right, so the motion was to go by cabinet recommendation, which we received, to not add back 1 more elementary.
At Roosevelt.
At Roosevelt, correct, and that's what the motion was.
Yep.
So if you vote yes, you're going with what the cabinet recommended. If you vote no, it's against cabinet recommended, and open it up later on, yes.
Yep, and then that means we're just going to assume, unless you tell us otherwise, that we're going to keep that other teacher at Roosevelt.
Yes.
Okay.
If indeed we decided to not restore that 1 teacher, at what point would it be determined you have to act? I mean, you can't wait till September 3rd or whatever.
Yeah, we tried that once. It didn't work.
How do you determine that? How do you determine that? And when do you determine that?
How do you determine how many kids are coming to school?
How do you determine if you need to add someone back as this proposal?
Yep. So let me give you the example Terry brought up at the kindergarten. Right now we're monitoring the kindergarten and asked Terry to recruit really, really hard so we can make sure that those kindergarten numbers don't go up. As an elementary teacher, kindergartens, you don't want to get too far over 20. 20 is a lot of kids at kindergarten and 1st grade. So at what point does it financially make sense to add a teacher back? And keep in mind we get about $8,000 per student, and a new teacher is about $65,000. So you need about 8 students more to get that. So that 4th teacher would be eligible to be hired at probably that, we're thinking 70 to 74 number or range for that. So we try to monitor that as much as we possibly can, and we do the same thing for the other classrooms. But we really want to make sure, it's hard because we want to tell all the teachers now where their assignments are so that we don't have the shifting around. If there is another section, then that opens up all those places so all teachers can move into those things, and then you have that domino effect of where those teachers can move into. So there is a logistic issue with that whole thing, but we try to do it as soon as we can with the data that we have. And we've been pretty good. I think 1 year we kind of goofed up because we should have had an extra kindergarten teacher at Jefferson, and we hired that one a little bit late. So it's tough.
Thanks. Yeah.
I fully support Courtney's intentions and her desires for that. but I'm going to vote in favor of this one only because I would like to see administrators look at this later this year when we are allowed to add back teachers in any place that it deems that, and make that decision at that time. Again, it's early to decide making decisions about class sizes when we don't know how many kids are going to be in each school in terms of that or where they'll be. But to take a look at all three buildings and determine where people are needed, we may possibly need to add somebody in a different building in terms of that, and we can do that. What we can't do is undo a unrequested leave tonight. So I'm going to be voting in favor, but would instruct administration to try to accomplish what Courtney and others have expressed, and that is have some fairly equitable, fair class sizes when we start school next fall.
It's painful for me to say I will vote in favor of not reducing based on the unfortunate reality is we have to cut money, and we have to do our best not to move any deeper into deficit spending. And it pains me, but I guess I'm going with that.
Further discussion?
So, Mr. Chair, I will vote no. And I totally understand your rationale, and I totally understand Mrs. Treadway's rationale here. It would be my hope that if that class size goes down, that the administration would work the best they can work with all three elementary schools to shift 1 or 2 or 3 students around type of thing. I understand that's not necessarily easy, but at the same token, I would like to see that hopeful, that effort made. And once again, difficult. There's, I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong.
Or we would recruit other students from schools to come to ours, then we'd be able to hire a teacher based on the number of students that enroll in our school. I like that.
Preschool parents, right?
Yep, get those preschoolers in.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just echo. I'm going to vote in favor of this motion. This is one that's a tough call. I don't feel like there's a right or wrong answer here. I know everyone is voting on this one with the best of intentions. In my case, I want to make sure that we create as much flexibility when we start looking at enrollments next year for administration to figure out where the tough points are in the district to address those. And it feels like vote in favor is the one that produces that flexibility. It's not an easy vote and it's not a fun vote, but it's the way I'm going to go this evening.
Anyone else? Hearing no further discussion. Kevin, you want to weigh in on this one? No, you can't.
Do you want to weigh in?
Thank you, sorry. Okay. All right, the motion before us is to accept the administration recommendation to not add back 1 teacher to Roosevelt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Nay. Nay.
Nay.
Okay, roll call vote.
John Bellingham. Nay. Courtney Cavalier.
Nay.
John Curry.
Aye.
Jason Engbrecht.
Aye.
Yvette Marthaler.
Nay.
Carolyn Treadway.
Aye.
Chad Wolf. No. Mr. Chair, this fails 3 to 4. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Okay. All right. Moving on to number 8, implicit rate subsidy.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to transfer $281,500 from other post-employment benefits to the general fund to help fund the added position at Roosevelt, in addition to the PE, if I'm calculating this correctly.
Okay.
Did I
So
do
second?
math correctly?
I came up with 280,600, but
I would trust your judgment.
What
Between the amount that we
the amount to
added,
get back to the
LTF
target is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay, what is the amount?
What is the amount?
So the amount that I've come up with, are you checking mine? Is the original 200, yeah, plus an additional 80,600. So it'd be $280,600.
Would you just
the way I looked at it was, if you look at option C,
yes, 900. I'm sorry, it's 900, not 600.
We do 50,000 for the facility. That would be 16,000.
Yep.
And then we need to make up that difference to the 65,000 with the additional.
Yeah, you're right. It's $280,900 would be the total to keep us at the board target of 1.928780.
And so what that enables us to do is hire the teacher at Roosevelt, hire the PE teacher at the high school, and what else am I missing?
So in total...
And then the $200,000 that we originally were going to set aside for us to offset the cuts to begin with.
Right.
That was
Originally in the plan. Is that right? Just so everybody's clear on that.
Yeah, so what the change from the very original proposals then would be to add back one teacher at each of the 3 elementary schools, add back the 0.5 at the high school, make those software cuts in total $80,600, reduce the digital learning coaches, $36,000, reduce 1 additional FTE at the elementary, and now withdraw an additional $80,900 from the irrevocable trust, in addition to the $200,000 in the original proposal.
Okay, can we vote on the amount? Can we vote on the irrevocable trust first, and then summarize what we're looking at?
I just want to make sure we got the right number in there.
Yeah.
So it is.
So just back up a second. So let's start from the beginning. $200,000 in the original.
Yeah.
So 200,000, right?
Right.
Okay, plus 32.5
for the PE.
For the PE.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Plus 65,000 for the teacher.
So it's actually plus 48,400 because they voted to move the whole 50,000
out of long-term.
Long-term facility. Okay, got it.
So it's 32.5 plus 48,400 for a total of 80,900.
So 280,000.
Yeah. 280,900.
Okay, got it.
The implicit
would be the total amount to withdraw from the irrevocable
trust. Okay, thank you.
280,900.
Okay, is there any more discussion on transferring $280,000 from our OPEB account?
And Mr. Chair, do we get a second on that too?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Now is there more discussion?
Can you explain to me again the impact of adding to that amount as opposed to not meeting our target? Maybe give me a pros and cons on.
Well, I think the pro is it is money set aside for this purpose, but it will reduce. I'm going to give a kind of a combo of pros and cons. It will reduce how well we are funding our liability, our OPEB liability. The pro of getting to our target is even getting to the original board target, we are still projecting to deficit spend a little under $400,000 next year.
What's your recommendation? Would you rather pull from the OPEB, Jennifer, or not meet the target? If you
in the big scheme of things, I think this district needs to make some very difficult decisions, not only for next year, but probably for the coming years. And every dollar we do not cut for next year is a dollar that we're putting off.
Can I just follow up with that, Courtney? So if we do it this year, take it out of the OPEB liability, next year, do you have that within the projected budget that we're taking out again?
No.
No, it's only one time, right?
Right now it's a
So next year with that deficit, just so you're clear, it's the $390,000 that shows the deficit does not include another withdrawal out of our OPEB fund. Okay.
Okay, back to continued discussion on taking from OPEB $280,000 and moving it to general fund.
Mr. Chair. So Jennifer, so my understanding is in the OPEB account now there's about 2.4 million.
Correct.
Okay. And so every year is money put into that?
No, that has not been the practice.
Okay,
no.
so it was at one time the board?
It was at one time.
A board put that X amount of money into that?
Yes.
And that draws interest and things?
Yes.
And so we get that out of there, okay.
Yes.
So here we have, it's kind of like a savings account at home, you have that, and when you're retired and don't have any more savings or anything to put into savings, then you start pulling out of the savings and you aren't gonna put anything back into it unless the board
Right.
puts that back in.
And it would be a general fund, it would be an expenditure then, so it would, to put money back in.
We have voted to do that.
I understand that, yes. So, again, I think Mr. Sesker said it, so caution us to pull money from this continuously, because it looks like a pool of money, it's easy. You know, here we go, if we drain it too far, you're not gonna get it back in. But yet we want to fund these other positions, and I do understand that as well, especially, and my concern is in the big picture, we still have areas within the district that we have not even addressed to be reduced. It was never presented. So if we're saving that for next year or whatever, then this looks like the pot it's gonna come from. But I just see, you know,
again, my original recommendation was 200,000.
I agree.
So maybe I'll just leave it at that.
But Jennifer, whether it's 200 or 280,900, this is simply a stopgap measure.
It's simply a stopgap.
It's stick your finger in the dike and hopefully it slows.
It's preventing from making other.
That's what it is. Money can go back in, additional money can come out. I will once again go back to 2 weeks ago. We simply need an increase in investment in our district, some form or fashion. Otherwise, these difficult conversations will continue to happen year after year.
What percentage of districts are fully funded in their OPEB?
I would say zero.
Zero, right. And so people understand OPEB is a requirement from Gatsby regulations that says if this district were to close its doors tomorrow, we would owe, and what's the total?
TRA would go under. If
TRA goes under,
we would have this amount of money we would owe.
Yeah, and that total amount is what?
A little over $7 million.
$7 million. So if we went bankrupt, sent everybody home, we'd have to come up with $7 million or divide it amongst the board, $1 million each apparently. So that's why as OPEB applies to school districts, it's extremely unlikely that that chicken is ever going to come home to roost.
And I would say that there are districts that don't fund it at all.
Yeah, in terms of that. So
thank you for that additional information. That's helpful.
Yeah, I'll point out that several years ago, the legislature for 1 year allowed boards to fully fund their OPEB obligation with a board-approved levy. Okay. Where are we? We're back to the consideration to move $280,000.
$280,900.
$280,900 from OPEB to unrestricted. Or you want me to call it general fund?
Yes.
How do you prefer?
Or just to withdraw that money out.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Okay, that concludes our list of items to be considered. If I'm keeping track of this correctly, we are on letter B.
Well, if you don't mind, can we take a little bit of a recess, and then Jennifer and I can go figure out the spreadsheet and then come back with what we believe is the recommendation, then have you guys go through it like John was talking about, so you can go through item by item to make sure we have the right things in there.
Okay.
Is that okay? Can we take a little bit of recess?
We'll recess till we see you.
I had to go since we got here.
facility.
these come from?
You might have a
Okay.
Okay.
So what are we on, a D?
Just wait.
Yeah, we are on the options.
But is there no ABC anymore, is there a D or? Okay.
Okay, how about we declare the recess over? I don't know how you do that, but here we are. So we will call on Jennifer now to show the, and this will be, this is item C that you.
So this will actually be option D now.
Oh, it is D.
Option D.
Option D.
D?
D.
D. So our changes added to the other one.
Yeah.
So, okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so we've made no changes to these, to this section, because this was what was the original recommendation. Again, this is part of the original recommendation. Then when we get down to this area here, so these are changes to the original recommendation. So, bringing back 1 FTE at 5th grade at Jefferson, add back 1 FTE at 5th grade at Lincoln. Now we've also put on there, add back 1 FTE at Roosevelt, add back 0.5 FTE at the high school. If we increase again up in the top area, we had $200,000 withdrawal from the irrevocable trust. Now we are increasing that to $280,900, so an additional $80,900. Next thing on the list are the software contracts that the cabinet has identified of $80,600, reducing the digital learning coaches, $36,000, and 1 additional FTE paraprofessional. That brings us to the original budget reduction target that the board identified of $1,928,780.
And so just to clarify too, this proposal includes everything that the school board approved in 1 through 8.
Correct.
In addition to our original proposals.
Correct.
Okay.
It's got the LTFM in there.
This is leaving the LTFM the way it was in the original recommendation.
Got it.
So there's no change to that.
You presented the agenda item. Is there a motion to consider this?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
So
Thank you for all your work. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, so if you vote in favor of this motion, then even though you voted no in any of the items 1 through 8, then you're still approving what the rest of the board approved, correct?
You're approving item D that has been presented.
Even though you disagree, an item above was that?
Yes.
Because that's what the full board voted for. Okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Well, I scared Kevin away. Items of information, our student representative. School board members.
Mr. Chair, Courtney had just mentioned it as a thank you, but over the last, I don't know, time goes fast, but two months, 2.5 months, 3 months, we have heard from a lot of people. We've heard a lot of stories. We've had a lot of research done. We've had a lot of work done. The board members have done a lot of due diligence in trying to see if there's, in essence, a better mousetrap, less painful cuts. None of them are easy. All of them are painful in some form or fashion. I will say it once again, we need an increase in investment in our district in some form or fashion. But I do want to thank the board. I want to thank the administration, the staff members. We just had, I don't know, 35, 40 people, I don't know, 25 people sitting in here for the better part of 3 hours tonight. The people at home on TV watching or whatever is going to be in the newspaper tomorrow, I don't know if that will recapture the passion and the energy and the dedication of our staff to come here numerous times over the last 2 to 3 months. And so thank you to everybody that's participated in this. As painful as it is, we will get through it. It's one foot in front of the other, and we'll continue to make the improvements that we can with the resources we have. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll just mention that I attended a Schools for Equity and Education regional meeting with Superintendent Sesker a couple Mondays ago, and wish that there was promising news, but at this point, the best you can say, it's not negative, so we just have to wait. And then I'll finally commend the administration and everybody that worked hard in presenting this. It is not easy, and I also want to thank the board members for their comments and their honest concerns and expressing them very appropriately. And ultimately, we are one board. Individuals, we are one citizen, but as a board, we act together in the interests of the students, and I think we've done so effectively tonight. Superintendent Sesker.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Sesker and I did attend a day at the Capitol a couple weeks ago, and for any staff or local resident that has concerns around the kinds of cuts that are needing to be made and future cuts that are most likely in our future next year, I would strongly ask people to contact our legislature to encourage them in every way possible, particularly to support our voluntary pre-K, additional funding for the shortfall around special ed, and our shortfall around English language learner education. Without state funding, we are going to continue to fall farther and farther behind and have to make deeper and deeper cuts. So if anyone wants suggestions on what they could put in a letter to our legislators, please contact Mr. Sesker.
Yep, be more than happy to.
Thank you.
You already covered a couple. We were at the Capitol, Carolyn and I, and then also John and I were at our C meeting. I'm also part of the C Executive Committee, and we help build the platform for C and make decisions about C. We will probably increase our C dues by maybe, I think it was $65 or $75 next year to catch up, but that's about all we had to discuss the last time around. I'm also part of SEMNet, Southeast Minnesota Net. It's basically our consortium that works with technology in the area in southern Minnesota. And what that is it really allows us to qualify for tech equity aid, and we get, it's not a lot, but we get some aid as a result of being part of this consortium. There's other benefits too. Maria does a lot of our technology on her own, but this does offer resources for other school districts. So we get about $15,000 to $20,000 a year from SEMNet as a result of being part of it. You had to be part of a consortium. The other one is, it's already past the witching hour for me, so I'm losing my thoughts, but the, what's the technology institution, Ryan or Jennifer, up at Falcon Heights?
TIES?
Yeah, TIES. If you're part of TIES, it's similar to TIES. And this is a smaller version of that, and if you're part of those consortiums, you get some tech equity aid back. I'm not going to go any further. We've gone long enough tonight, so I've got a few other things, but that can wait.
Okay, thank you. I will point out that the next regularly scheduled board meeting, official board meeting, isn't for 21 hours, and will take place in this room. So we do have a special board meeting for the purpose of finalizing the reductions and approving the actual information that needs to be shared with our staff, and that's tomorrow night at 5:30 right here. Okay? Anything else for the good of the order? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
There's plenty of moves and seconds. Meeting adjourned.